Alright, so this video is on point-slope form. So a couple things is, what do you think point-slope form involves? I'll give you 2 seconds to think about that. 1, 2. It involves a point and slope. You were right. So it involves a point and it involves a slope. Okay? So the formula for point slope that you will have to memorize is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. Okay? And this m is going to represent your slope, like always. And then this y1 and this x1 are a point. So it's x and a y of a point. So this first y is always going to be in your equation, and this x is always going to be in your equation, because we have y equals mx plus b. So let's look at some examples. So it wants us to write an equation for the line through the given point with the given slope. So all it wants me to do is substitute in or plug in. So first off, this is your x1 and y1, and then here is your slope. So you're going to start off with y. And you're always going to have a minus sign. So y minus, and then your y1, which was a 5. And then continue on with that equation, so equals, and then your slope, which was 2 over 3. Then go ahead and have a parenthesis with an x. Minus sign will always be there again, and then your x point was a 2. Okay? And I can't simplify this any further. We're not going to distribute or anything, so this is our answer. So this is the equation written in point-slope form. So let's take a look at this middle one. The only way they get harder is when you've got some negatives involved. So again, this is x1 and y1, and then that is your slope. So you're going to start off with y minus. So y minus, and then your y point, which was an 8, equals m, so negative 2 parentheses. Go ahead and write your x and your minus sign. So now this is where it gets tricky, because you're going to plug in your x1, which was a negative number. So you are going to have 2 negative signs there. So the only thing you can do further is to simplify this. And so we know that 2 negatives are a positive, so you would just change that to a plus. So your final equation is y minus 8 equals negative 2x plus 2. So that is the equation written in point-slope form. So why don't you try this example over here and press pause, and then we'll go over it. So once I plugged it in, I started off with y minus a negative 1, which you guys see that I made a positive down here, equals your slope, negative 4 over 5, parentheses x, and then a subtraction of a 4. Okay, so this is how you write something in point-slope form given a point and a slope. So now let's look at finding a point and a slope from a problem. So it says, given the equation in point-slope form, which is right here, determine the point and the slope. So what it wants you to do is tell me the point that they used and tell me the slope that they used. Okay? The slope is the easiest thing to find. It's the number in front of the parentheses. So your slope is a 4. Now it gets trickier when you do the points. So let me go ahead and write out this formula so I can show you. So if you were to take this negative 2 outside to be a point, notice how that minus sign is always there. So when you take it out, it's only going to be a positive 2. Okay. So your shortcut is to change the signs of the problem, or of the numbers. So I've got negative 2 here. When I take it out into my point, it's going to be a 2, because that negative sign has to be in your equation. So again, right here, I've got a positive, and the only way for this to become a positive is when your x point is a negative number. Okay, because when you were to substitute this in here, 2 negatives would give you a positive. So it's tricky because you're working backwards. So the shortcut is you're going to change your signs when you determine the point that they used. Also make sure that this x value stays in the x plot, and then this y number goes into your y point of your point. Okay. All right, on the other one, my points and my slope. Again, slope is the easiest to find. It's 2 over 3. It's the number in front of the parentheses. However, here we've got something funky going on because I don't have a number. So if there's no number, that's like saying y plus 0 is on that side. So when I get my coordinate point, I'm going to change that -1 to a +1. And then I can't really change that 0 to anything. But if there is no number with the x or with the y, that's going to be an assumed 0. So now, once you have a point and a slope, then you can graph the line. So it says, using the slope and the point from above, graph the following lines. So what you do is you start at this point. So I'm going to plot -3, 2 on the graph, which is right here. And then I'm going to do my slope of a 4 over 1. So I'm going to go up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, over 1. And I'm also going to go down 4 over 1. And you can do it one more time. So then that is our line. And we can graph it using point slope. So over here, I need to graph a 1, 0, which would be on the x-axis, and then go up 2 over 3, up 2 over 3, and go down 2 and left 3 to get more points. And then draw your line. Okay. So again, you can graph a line by finding the point and then finding the slope from that point. Okay. So let's take a look on the back page. So now we're going to be given 2 points and we want to write the equation in point slope form. So if I have 2 points, I'm missing something, I'm missing the slope. So to write something in point slope form, you have to have the slope and you have to have a point. So I have 2 points here, which means I need to find the slope. And so the slope from 2 points, you guys know how to find. It's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So once I find that slope, then I'll have a slope and a point. So I'm going to start by doing x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to start off by plugging in and go 7 take away 5 on top. And then 2 take away -2 on bottom. I know this is going to become a plus, so 7 minus 5 is a 2 on top over 4, which reduces to a half. So 1/2 is going to be my slope. So now you get to pick any point you want. I'm going to pick the positive point because I think that's easier, and I'm going to write it in point slope form. So I'm going to start off with y minus your y point, which was 7, equals your slope, parentheses x, minus, and then your x point, which was a 2. Okay? So there is the equation of the line written in point slope form. So again, if you have 2 points, first you have to find a slope, pick your favorite point, and substitute it in. So why don't you try this one on your own and press pause and we will go over it. When you find your slope, I did -7 minus -5, which again is going to give you a plus, and that'll give you -2 on top, and then -9 on bottom. And we know that a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So your slope was a 2 over a 9. And then if you use this first point up here, you would have this equation down here, which you would need to make this into a plus as a final answer. And then if you use the second point, you would have this equation down here, both with pluses, because your points were both negative. Okay? So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we are going to move on to changing from point slope to slope intercept form. So what do you want your final answer to look like if it says slope intercept form? Well, you want your answer to look like y equals mx plus b. So you want y to be completely by itself. So they've given you these 2 equations that are not y by itself. So the first thing you have to do is distribute. So you're going to distribute and multiply. So 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times 4 is an 8. And then you're going to bring everything down. The next thing you have to do is to get y by itself. And the reason y is not by itself is because of this minus 3. So the opposite of a minus 3 is a plus 3. If you do it to the left side, you're going to have to do it to the right side under one of these terms. And you're going to do it under the 8 because it's its like term because it does not have an x. So you're going to have y equals 2x plus 11. Okay? So now you've converted this from point slope form to slope intercept form, which you guys already know how to graph. Okay? So if you don't want to graph it in point slope, you can always graph it in slope intercept form. Okay? So why don't you try this one? Try changing it to y equals mx plus b. Alright, so my final answer was y equals 1/2 x minus 9. So what I did was I distributed, it got 1/2 x, and then distributed, and 1/2 is the same as dividing by 2. So negative 8 divided by 2 was a 4 negative. Last thing was to subtract 5 under its like term over here to get negative 9. Okay, so that is how you go from point slope form to slope intercept form. You need to distribute. Alright, one more, and it's the hardest, okay? So it says, given the points and the slope, write the equation in slope intercept form. So I want my answer to look like y equals mx plus b, okay? But when they give you a point and a slope, you have to do point slope first. So kind of the order to this is you have to write it in point slope form, and then you're going to have to change to y equals mx plus b. Okay, so you're going to have to change it to y equals mx plus b once you substitute it in. So I've got a point and a slope, so I'm going to start off by writing my equation to help me out. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So first off, I would have y minus 1 equals 4 times x minus negative 6, because this 6 was negative. I'm going to go ahead and make that a plus, because I know two negatives are a positive. My last thing to do is distribute. So I would get 4x plus 24, bring down y minus 1. Last step is to add 1 to both sides. So finally my equation is y equals 4x plus 25. Okay, so that is how you can go from plugging something into point slope form and then changing it to y equals mx plus b. So try this last one on your own and we will go over it. The final answer was y equals negative 1/5 x minus 4. To do that, I did y minus a negative 3, which will become a plus. Same thing, brought my slope down, and then x minus negative 5 becomes a positive. I distributed and got negative 1/5 x. Negative 1/5 times a 5 is a negative 1. Then I would subtract 3 on both sides to get negative 4. So that's how you go from plugging it into point slope form and then changing it to y equals mx plus b. So make sure you just read the question and know what it wants your final answer to look like. Okay? So now you can practice point slope form. Thanks for watching.